Then I ain't going. I ain't blowing no smoke. I mean, I've been sober, but you should have known it. And I wasn't going.
Well, you know what? When I first thought about reaching back out to you after just my social media hiatus, the first thing that I thought about, and I was like, man, is like, I remember the first time I think you and I talked. I don't know if it was over the phone, or if it was over Messenger, but I was kind of going through this space where I think I was either separated or about to go through a divorce, something around there. And I remember you telling me, for better lack of words, is, if I were you, I would do my best to make things work. Do you remember
Yeah,
saying
I'm sure that I did. I usually give the same advice, so at least we know like I'm consistent.
you are consistent? You are consistent. But having not like gone through that process, I remember thinking, I was like, what a strange piece of advice. And now looking back at it, like I think that I understand like why you said it, because it's a very long journey to go through. And then even after, it's still a journey. But now that I am sane and now that I am no longer fully emotional, I'm just curious, like what was your reasoning, behind that piece of advice? Because I have found myself giving that same piece of advice as well.
Yay for you. I'm glad that that's what's kind of happening with this, how it's moving along. So, as we know, I went through the same issues, right? Had to go through a separation. We actually got back together, then went through a separation again, having our daughter, and then ultimately through a divorce. Of course, nobody's goal when they go into a marriage is to like think about how I would handle a divorce or how I would handle my spouse not living in the house whenever we
Yeah.
have kids. But the reality of it is for half of Americans, I guess, if you look at the statistics, is that that is the case, that we end up
Yeah.
divorced, separated after kids. And like one of the things that I learned from that kind of pushed me in that direction of trying to figure out how to make it work is, I don't want to say the failures, but the failures of my siblings. So they had
Mm.
and kind of went through the whole custody situation and fighting with each other. But mainly who it impacted were my parents, the grandparents, who didn't have access to their grandkids because mom and dad were fighting, because my brother and his child's mothers were fighting. And so I just didn't want it to be like that. I didn't want my kids' grandparents or their parents or anything like that to be affected based off of the feelings that I had with this other person. Because at the end of the day, it's about the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be connected forever because we have this kid together. So instead of going through those moments battling each other and the kids seeing that and the kids feeling the impact of that, how can we just like get past our own issues and do what's best for our kids at the end of the day? In short, the answer to your question is I learned from the experiences of my siblings.
Wow. And it's crazy hearing that, because you had that perspective. And I feel like for me, I really didn't have anyone in my family that had been divorced.
Mm.
I was looking at, my aunts and my uncles and those marriages lasting 20, 30 years. So it was it almost felt like I was just like a fish out of water. It's like, I have no idea really how to
Yeah.
navigate these waters. I don't have, necessarily an example. And I think that's part of the reason why I reached out to you, because you see certain things in social media and you've been so open, with your process. And, I think that's why I felt comfortable, because it's like, I need to talk to somebody that has been through it,
Yeah.
that has seen it, that has some experience. Because when you haven't had that experience, it is kind of hard to navigate, right? What you said, you have the emotions and then you have your kids. And I know it's easier said than done to put the emotions aside.
Yeah.
And it is a really long process.
It is a process. Let me tell you that it was not always cordial from the beginning, but you just have to kind of keep thinking about that in the back of your head. Like at the end of the day, it's about the kids. At the end of the day, I'm really upset right now, and At the end of the day, it's about the kids.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm curious, how long did it take you to get to that point where you're just like, okay, I can look at this individual as the father of my kids? You're like, I'm still going through it. But like there does come a point, right, where like the reality of your relationship is established, right? And you can kind of separate, the father of your kid and your kids, even though there might be some emotions at play. But when did you kind of get to that stabilization point?
So I guess if we think about the background of me and my ex, we were together since high
Mm-hmm.
school. So we were friends before we were together. We were friends even when we were like separated. And ultimately, I found out that he's a good person. He just wasn't a good husband for me.
Yeah.
So like we still get along now. We can still laugh and everything like that. The romantic piece and the commitment piece just didn't work out for us. And so when we separated, he was actually in a different state. I know that's not I don't want to say feasible. I know that's not the case for everyone. But I think that helped me kind of get past things a little bit. I didn't have to look him in the face every day.
Mm-hmm.
I had full custody of my daughter at the time because he was of our daughter at the time because he was out of state. So that kind of helped me move through that process a little bit faster. Now, whenever he moved into state and I had to look him in the face and talk to him about how I was hurt and about how we were going to figure out how to raise our daughter. I think once it was all off of my chest and I went through like all of those stages of grief, they would call it, like I'm sad, I'm angry, then it was just like, okay, I'm looking over at my daughter right now, and I don't want her to see me like this every day. I don't want her to see us like this when it's pickup time, drop off time, holidays, or anything like that. So how can we move forward? I would say it took probably about a year or two
Yeah.
to go through, like that whole wave of things. Him not being there and me being mad, then him being present, me being mad, sad, angry, confronting. Another big piece of that is that I had to confront the girl that he cheated on me with. So I had to have that conversation with her too. Like, this is how I feel about you. This is what
Mhm.
happened. And now I've let that go. So all of that kind of went into play.
Wow. I felt
Yeah.
that whole journey.
I'm sorry. I
I'm
want
I,
to
I'm
know that journey.
but I think it's a healthy one. I always tell people, co-parenting relationships is probably, at least for me, has been the most challenging relationship to manage because you really have to check your ego and your pride at the door.
Yeah.
And you, like you said, like you have to look at your kids, and like you had a different component added to that where you really had to, push some things aside, for your child to get, the best out of life. I feel like for me, you know, it was more so, okay, well, I have to see this person, maybe on a daily basis. And how do you really navigate that? And I'm not gonna lie, like I think the out of sight, out of mind thing kind of works, best for me. But I also, noticed that kind of looking at it from this mentality, like you said, like this person might have not been a good husband, right, for you, but they can still be a good person. And I don't necessarily know if that's the case in my situation, but being able to take that situation for what it is and then learn from it and then try in some way to make the most. But even that takes some time. I probably spent a good amount of time just really angry.
Yeah, I get that. Let me also share, and you might want to cut this later because it may not lead in the direction that you want it to go. But just to be honest with you, we have a blended family. So my
Mhm.
husband has a kid, I have a kid, and then we have a kid together. My son, oldest son, I call him my son because I'm pretty much all that he's known in Milwaukee.
Oh, totally understand.
Okay. My oldest son, I'm pretty much the only mom that he's ever known.
Mhm.
Um, his mom makes contact every now and then. So like we've been in each other's lives for 7 years. His mom has tried to call like 2 times. So while everything is like fine and dandy between my ex-husband and me. I don't know if or how the situation would be the same when or if she tries to get in the picture.
Wow. And I feel like that right there is like a topic in itself. You know what I mean, truly, because you're balancing multiple dynamics. I mean, that is, and it's one thing I feel like dealing with the dad, it's another thing dealing with the mom.
Yeah, and I think that that piece may relate a little bit more to your situation where you feel like
Mm,
this would probably just not be a good person, period. So how do I maintain the sanity for the sake of my child when this person is possibly not a good person versus the situation that I have where we can get along because we were friends ahead of time and stuff.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's really good perspective to hear. I think especially for people that are, kind of going through the process. Because one thing I realized, after going through, I did divorce support, did that
Mhm.
whole thing. And it's like everyone's situation is so nuanced that there really isn't like this one size fit all piece of advice, right?
Mhm.
The divorce process looks different, who you're dealing with looks different, the situation you're in. And so it's kind of like you have to essentially navigate it the best way that you can in the most mature way that you can. And I like to tell people like I'm an Academy Award winning actress.
I believe that. I do get it.
Because in some ways, like like I said, you had to check your ego at the door, and you do have to put on, just kind of a certain face and demeanor, to manage, those relationships. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because that always just really you stood out to me as I was just looking back at that time period of my life. And I think you were probably the first person that I reached out to and was like, hey, I'm going through this situation and I have no idea what to do. And just remembering like how, vital it was for me just moving forward.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you've been co-parenting for some time. And I remember like watching your YouTube videos where you were talking about co-parenting and what that looked like. And I think at the time when I was watching it, I was married and I was like, I was like, it's just an interesting journey to hear. And, you really get to see like how adults can flourish when they're able to put their emotions to the side. But I am curious, what were your expectations for co-parenting in the beginning? And how did that change for you to now?
Well, when I was mad, when I was mad and we were first going through the divorce proceedings, I was in the place of everything by the book. So we're going to get this paperwork to look like how we want it to look, and then we're going to follow this paperwork to a T because I don't want you to try to pull one over on me. I don't want anyone to feel like they got unequal time, like anything like that. So we're just going to follow
Mhm.
exactly what the paperwork says. Um, Reflecting on that in the moment and realizing selfishly how busy I was, that wasn't going to be able to work for me. And it would have been selfish for me to take the time that I am away from my daughter and put her with a different family member or a babysitter or someone else when she could have been spending that time with her dad. When
Yeah.
he's done nothing wrong to her, he did something wrong to me, but he's done nothing wrong to her. So that would have been a very selfish punishment. So I think we were able to kind of easily, again, once we had that conversation and everything was off of each other's chest, transition to the paperwork is the base, but we'll do whatever works for us. So
Mhm.
if you guys are going out of town and you want to take her to see her family, and I don't have anything pertinent going on, and it's my week or my weekend, sure, take her. If I want her for extra time, because I want to do something special, or if I just miss her, and y'all don't have anything going on, then I can keep her. So we were able to kind of transition from very strict and by the paperwork to now it's just like, do you want her? Do you want Tiana? Where do you want to go? What do you want
Mhm.
to do? Um, I would also asterisk that with, we'll see how that goes whenever she's a teenager.
Yes, because I hear it changes.
We might have to go back by the paperwork. I feel like my child is going to be the one that's like, I'm mad at you. Can I go to my dad's house? And I'm going to have to say, no, this paperwork says you're here.
That is very true. I do hear from people like, yeah, once they become teenagers, you kind of have to look at it a little different, right? Because you do want to factor in their opinion. It's funny that you said that like you were really like straight by the book. I feel like I was kind of the opposite, but still, I was kind of like, this is the framework. However, you're open. I felt like opening that door was like, whenever you want to see your kids, you can. And I had a set of rules where it's like, I'm never going to keep you away from your kids. I'm never going to come after you for your money just for the sake of doing it, and I'm going to give you your privacy when you need it. I initially kind of had it in my head where it's like, we're going to spend, like, we can still spend the holidays together, and we can still do this as a family. And I remember the first holiday that came up, and it was brought up of, are we going to do this together? And I just remember thinking like, I really don't want to do that.
I remember you asking me about that. You had mentioned you holidays.
I had this kind of hopeful vision in my head. And I think it was a vision that was still very much attached to the unconscious version of me, the version of me that really didn't realize like, no, this person actually is unhealthy for you. You know what I mean? So I think that's where that expectation was. And I also had this thought of like, we can live in the same neighborhood. It's perfectly fine.
You almost live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, which honestly, and I'm sure you can agree, it is convenient. It is convenient. And, we live like 5 minutes away from one another, and, enough to where there's some distance. But I just remember having these just unrealistic expectations for what our co-parenting relationship would look like and how I would operate in them.
When I was thinking through our transition of strict co-parenting to a little bit more open, I had to think about my ex's family. They have a really good model, which is almost like exactly what we do. He comes from a blended family as well. I remember when we were like in high school, and even when I was dating and married to him, I would never know that his brothers or sisters or anything like that were step kids. I would never know whose grandparents, aside from the fact that like I knew them. So I knew this is his mom and her dad and her mom and his dad and everything like that, because they did holidays and everything together. They bought presents for all the kids, whether it was their kids or not, grandparents, aunts, uncles, like everything. And I do remember thinking like, I want my kid to feel like that. If she can't feel like we were successful in the two of us being together, I at least want her to feel like she's just got a super huge extended family.
Exactly. That's the best feeling. And I've seen that dynamic too, with my kid's dad, where we knew each other since we were 10. And I don't think it came to my attention that his siblings were step, by blood until, we were in our 20s. And I think that's a testament, right? And I think that's such a good practice, to have, where it's like, no, we're all family. You just get a few extra over here, a few extra over there, but love is love at the end of the day. But I always just think it's interesting, because I'll ask a few like of friends, like, what did you think co-parenting would look like, and what does it actually look like? And I have learned, it isn't going to look the same every day. It's not going to look the same every month, and being flexible and also lending grace to the other co-parent is vital within reason. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that, because I remember seeing those videos and thinking, I was like, this is so cool. Like how you have just really navigated it in just such a healthy way. And your husband's on board, and you guys just partner really well together. So yeah, I just remember that. Yeah. It changes.
Me about co-parenting all the time, and like I said, I'm an open book. I love sharing it. I love that our co-parenting style right now has felt very successful for us and for like the kids and everyone that's involved. But almost guarantee there will be a time where we're gonna have to like this. So we'll see.
Yeah, because it is dependent on the kids. And I always have to remind myself, because, in full transparency, I'm not necessarily thrilled with where like my co-parenting journey is, but I've started to realize, it really depends on like where people are in their healing journey, with themselves, with the relationship, and just opening up the space for them to kind of grow and, being hopeful.
Yeah, I agree.
That is the space that I'm in. So, I think one of the other challenges, right, that presents itself with co-parenting is like you mentioned, like you still have, a life and, goals that you have for yourself. And that has probably been one of the biggest challenges where it's like, okay, I have my kids, 90% of the time. How do I pursue all of the things that I want, now that I am balancing this new norm? And I'm curious to like hear like how you navigated it, you know?
Same thing when I look at my calendar for the week, I'm like, how am I navigating this? But so to kind of put things in perspective, I know you know a piece of what I do, but let me just lay it all out for you.
Yes.
Wife, mom of three, blended family. My like full-time job, I work in an education nonprofit. I'm also an officer in the Army Reserve. I also partner with the number one nutrition company in the world. I'm also a master fitness trainer. I work with the digital media team at our church, and then I run the social media. I'm the content creator for my military unit, and I'm in a sorority. So all those things. I'm sure I probably forgot something, but I have to think like, okay, what do I get paid by, and then what do I volunteer for?
You have to prioritize, right? Yeah, I get it.
So all of those things, and number one, like I pray very, very often. I pray specifically that I know when to say not yet, and that I know when to say no. I know like what I can hold on my plate. And then I pray for my husband because my current husband, because like he is my biggest supporter in all of this. He is very quick to say like, yeah, go do that. I've got the kids. Yes, go there. I've got the kids. I'll make sure they get here, there, everywhere. Like he is phenomenal. The second piece of that, because obviously you're not remarried, or at least not that I know of.
No.
Full advantage of my village. Like the whole village got a little bit of a piece in it, whether that is grandparents, which they have always been very open to helping out, or they don't even consider it helping out, right? They're grandparents, so they're spending time with their grandkids.
Yeah.
And then going back to having that positive co-parenting relationship. If I need to go out of town, like I'll be gone this whole summer for military training. Am I stressed that my daughter's going with her dad? No, that's her dad. Will my parents be helping out with our other two boys that are at home so my husband doesn't get overwhelmed? Yes. So I really try to utilize the village. And what's funny is in the beginning, what's ironic is in the beginning, whenever I first separated from my husband, of course, I was going through my emotions of like shame and I can do this all by myself. I was not quick to lean on the village. There were often times where my parents had to say like, give me the child. Like, it's okay for you to go hang out with your friends and let me watch her. Or my friends to even say, yeah, bring your kid, bring your daughter with you. We can totally make this work. And now I'm like, shoot, who wants her? You can have her. As long as you can pass a background check, you can take any of these kids. So that kind of helps me balance things too when it comes to the kids and everything that I have going on. But then the last piece is I live by my calendar. Like if you didn't message me today, when that didn't show up on my calendar, I would have never known that it was happening, because I literally pull up my calendar moment by moment to say, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be focusing on?
Yeah.
So all of those things, prayers, village, calendars, knowing when to say not yet.
In that part, Knowing when to say not yet, I feel like is the biggest lesson, as well as your village. I actually wanted to touch on both of those because, I was driving from work and I was just thinking about, how over the past year, I've really had to kind of learn like, I am only one person. And
Yeah.
there was only so much that I can do. Because, like you said, right, you're almost stretching yourself to do way more than what you actually can. And in the end, you're shortchanging everyone
Yeah.
because you're not operating at your best, right? You're exhausted, you're not utilizing your resources. And, for me, I think the biggest struggle was I wasn't ready to revamp my village.
Yeah. I get that.
You know what I mean? Because I do feel like sometimes like the people that you have helping might not necessarily be helping you in the way that you need at that time. And that's nothing against them, right? But sometimes you need just more help, right? You might need people that are closer to you. You might need people that have, more time on their hands. And so at the beginning of this year, it was, I don't know if you remember Jenny.
Yeah.
We'll give her a shout out because she deserves it at all times. Yeah, Carson. Her husband actually told me, he was like, you need to make life work for you. And I did not think about it that way, and just running myself into the ground, not utilizing the people that I had, not swapping out the people that weren't supporting me. And once I made that switch, that's when I noticed, all of these areas of opportunity opened up. But I think it's almost like that mindset that you have to constantly tell yourself, like, I'm only one person. I only have two hands. I only have two legs, and I can only be one place at a time.
Yeah. And be okay with that.
Exactly. Because I used to look at it as a weakness.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like, no, I got it. I got it. I got it. And I feel like when you do that, instead of thriving, you're simply surviving. And you're not accomplishing. And I think that's part of the reason, right? Where it's like when you have some goals, but you don't have, the right people behind you supporting it, it really is difficult to accomplish it. Yeah, that is a daily lesson.
Feel when you take care of you. And so now your son, your kids can look at you and see happy mommy or happier mommy rather than stressed out mommy because she's trying to take on the world with no support.
Exactly, exactly. So I really liked you just touching on the village piece because that's where I've noticed, leaning into that more instead of running around like, yeah, I'll drop off and I'll pick up and I'll go here, and learning to just leverage, who you have to be successful and meet those goals. So yeah, I'm always curious because I'll see like on social media, it's like, she's got a lot. She's got you can feel, and I think as a mom, right? Like we all know the mental workload that also tags into it. And I know you also just touched on prayer and how valuable that is. And I had somebody tell me in a Bible study, they're like, when you start your day with God, He will dictate what's for you and what you should pursue, and I'm not a minister. That's my dad's job. I don't venture into it. I have a potty mouth. I'm just telling you the nuggets. But I have noticed that where it's like if you do start your day with God and you're praying over, where exactly should I go, right? If your presence is there, then that's where I need to be. And so I really like hearing you, just say like, is this something for me, and being intentional in that thought.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that goes along with everything that I do is that I try to make the moments that I am with my kids and that I am with my family all about my kids and my
Mhm.
family. Because I'm away so much or because I'm busy so often, those two things shouldn't really bleed together, or all those things shouldn't really bleed together unless it's, like a picnic or something like that they're
Yeah.
supposed. But when I'm with them, I'm with them. And that makes a difference.
Yeah, it's all about, right, the quality of time that you're spending. There was a study that said, like, it's not necessarily about how much time you're spending with your kids, it's about the quality of it, right? You can be with your kids for 8 hours and you're on your phone the entire time. So it's like, well, what are they get? Yeah, you were there. Your body was physically there versus, giving your kids 2 hours of undivided attention. And, I'm curious, like, if that was ever a challenge for you, because I noticed, and, it's more so having two kids, right? And making sure that each child gets the time that they need,
That is
spending that time with them.
So that's something that we actually had discussed in counseling. So when with my oldest son, so specifically with my oldest son, when his mom pops in and out of his life, it kind of causes some issues for him.
Mhm.
So we had counseling, and one of the things that the counselor had expressed to us is that when your daughter is away, then you need to make specific time for him to do things that he's excited about. Or if I'm away with my daughter, I'm away with the youngest, and my husband just has our oldest, and he needs to be doing something that's specifically with and for him, because of all those other moments that are being taken away from them.
Mhm.
And I've had the conversation with my oldest before about how he feels with his sister being able to go to a different house. Like, she gets an escape is what he would think. She gets an escape. She gets to go to her dad's house or whatever, and
Yeah.
I hear the whole time. Now, most kids who grew up in like a two-parent household are like, dude, what are you talking about? I would love to have both of my parents and in one
Yeah.
house. But you kind of get it. It does kind of feel like an escape for her to be able to go and do whatever else at her dad's house, and then he doesn't get that time away. So when we do have that time with him, or when we can make that time with him, there are often times where we just have like junior days, like, what do you want to do today, junior? Or meatball, we call our youngest meatball days, like, what do you want to do today?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen as often as maybe we would like for it to, because at the end of the day there's still a whole bunch of stuff on the calendar, but we do try to intentionally think about it.
Yeah, I feel like you really have to, like, in the, I say, like, kind of a split family home. That's the way I, look at it. And it's almost like you kind of, he almost has a mirror, right? Where it's like, so this is how it's supposed to be, but my reality is different. And that can apply across the board.
I never thought about that until the therapist said. I was like, well, damn, that does make sense. That does make sense. It does feel like she gets to go on a vacation every other weekend and one week out of the month, and I'm stuck with my same parents, especially when we know that her dad's house is a little bit more lenient than our house is.
Hmm.
So it feel like a getaway
Yeah.
when Sissy gets to stay here.
That's exactly it. And on my end, it's kind of like for my two kids, they're 3 years apart, and Harper's our oldest. And for her, she's just like, I need space away from my brother, right? And when you have a two-parent family and they're living in the same household, that's so easy to do, to take one out. And I think one of the things that I've been really grateful for is, one, the village that we have, and their dad understanding that aspect of, everybody needs just time by themselves. Which she really, needed, because there was a lot of acting out. There was some jealousy at play with the baby brother. And
We could do another one
we
about
could
that.
do that's a whole other segment. But and we did start noticing, right, like, just that time away where she can express herself without this interruption is vital. And it's, I think one of the crazy things with Harper that I've always noticed is, like, when I ask her, like, how do you feel about, the fact that your parents aren't together, how are you adjusting, it's always like, well, it's fine, it's really not much, different. But what is different is that she doesn't get her time with each parent,
Hmm.
which was very interesting to me. And so I agree with you, like, having those intentional days, even though they're not as common, like, I would love to be able to do that, like, every week.
Yeah.
Um, and have that in place. And you know, one of the things that we did, and this is simply because like I'm going back to school and I need help. So 2 days a week, you know, we have a sitter that comes by, but one of those days is a designated day for one of the kids. You know, because it's just I miss it. You know, I miss like just being able to identify their personality as it stands on their own and seeing how they've grown and just hearing about their day. And so, you know, it's, you know, I mean, you got to pay her, but it is what it is.
Yes, that's true.
But you know, it works, and you do see kids flourish. So I love hearing that. And you know, I think just the balancing piece, and I think you touched on a lot of really good pieces. I think the prayer element is vital.
Yeah.
Praying over your week, praying over your kids, and especially, you know, praying over your husband. And you know, my prayer is to hopefully, you know, be in your position.
I don't know how I lucked up. Look, I don't know how I lucked up on this man, but I was like, you know, you're stuck here, right? Because
I know, I'm like that in itself. I'm like, I just remember seeing kind of just some of the posts. I was like, this is looking good. And I'm just really happy. And, you know, I think there is something to something to having a very supportive husband that sees your vision and sees, you know, you for you and understands why you're doing the things that you're doing, that just fuels it even more and gives you the leverage that you need to be successful. So
yeah,
kudos to him. Yeah.
he's gonna be happy. I'm like, babe, I talk about you all the time, just so you know. Because I am truly blessed, and it works out really well for us. He's a former Marine, so right now he's going to school like on his GI Bill, and I'm like, I'm so glad that you are not as busy as I am, because two busy people could not
Mm-mm.
run this household. Like it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And he enjoys the fact that he likes how determined, committed, like all of the things about me that make me as busy as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And he also likes that I can leave him alone and let him play video games and stuff like and so because I'm gone, I can't nag about it. So it kind of works out.
It really does. Like right. And you know, I feel like the whole like relationship dynamic and that whole spiel, it can be its own segment too. But I do think that there is something to be said about two people that are fully capable of being independent and pursuing their own interests and humbling themselves enough to be able to step up when it's necessary. So, you know, I don't know a lot about marriage. I know a little bit. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was just your fitness journey. You are a boss. You are a
Sneak that in there.
do it. And I'm gonna make sure there's a video just for that. I promise you I will. I'm gonna figure it out. But, you know, I think that, you know, that's one of the things that I'm just always like so inspired by is just, you know, the commitment that you have. And also, side note, I think the juice place that you go to is in Rockwall. Is it off of, I'm not going to get into specifics, but I know where that location is. And it's just really great, you know, one, seeing you advocate for having a fit lifestyle, but leading a healthy lifestyle. And I saw something, I think you might have posted it today or yesterday, where you were like, what is my why? And the primary reason, right, is being healthy for your kids. You can't predict the future, right? You can't predict what ailments you get, but you can control, you know, your body and what goes into it. And, you know, you've been fit for a while, you know, I know you've done gymnastics and everything, but like, when did it kind of kick into like hyper gear for you?
I don't know. I've always been a pretty active person just because I enjoy it. I cheered in college and stuff too. And so like we had to stay active, but I find that it is a really big stress reliever for
Mhm.
me. It's like my therapy, and I know a lot of people say that because it's true, but it is my therapy. So I do start my day with prayer, but I also start my day with exercising. Um as often as I can. If I can't do it during the day, I usually do it at night. But I find that I feel better whenever I do it in the morning. And that does take away from some of my sleep time, because with all of the things I have going on and having to make sure that my kids are ready for school and stuff, it does mean that I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But that is a sacrifice that I'm willing to make for my mental health and my physical health, because I know how it affects me and my mood and how I can feel throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece. And I agree with you, like the morning workout. I don't know if I'm really one to like share a lot of detail on my journey, because when it comes to my fitness, I think it's just one of those like tender time. You and your son run
Yes.
together, right? And he's picked up the sport. And do you feel like, by you setting that example of I'm taking care of my body and not just working out, right? This isn't just some sort of fad diet. This isn't something I'm doing to fit in a dress for this event. This is my life.
Yeah.
And
I
how have you seen it just trickle down to your children?
It definitely has. Sometimes it's not a good thing. So oftentimes my kids ask me whenever they're grabbing something to eat or we're out somewhere, they're like, "Mom, is this healthy?" And sometimes I'm like, like you're a kid. It's okay to have chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese and
Oh,
stuff like that. No, it's not the healthiest thing, but you're a kid. You
yeah.
can deal with it right now, while at the same time being able to express, no, you don't need all of that candy. Yes, you need to eat all of your food groups. Yes, you need to try these different types of things because they are good for your body. So I do kind of see that effect whenever it comes to food. Fitness is a little bit of a hit or miss. It depends on what kind of season they're in. So we've gone through periods of time where, yes, I want to run with mommy, and yes, I want to work out with mommy, and other times where, no, I don't want to walk around the block with you. I want to go play video games. Or no, I don't 5K that you also signed me up for, or something like that. And I just have to kind of accept those times when they happen, and know that they understand what it means to live a fit life and what that leads to, and they understand what it means to have a nutritious meal and what that could lead to. But right now their job is to just be kids and make as
Mhm.
healthy of choices as they can.
And that it's that part, that the healthy choices. And I'll say this: I had a coworker of mine, and she was telling me the story about how she was trying on dresses, and her daughter was watching her, and she mentioned kind of a comment of, "Mommy's getting so fat; she has to learn how to fit into this." And my ears just perked up. I was like, "Man."
Hmm.
You do have to be so careful, right, in the type of example that you're seeing, that you're setting for your kids. Because I remember my mother, kind of doing more of these like fad diets, and you have to transition it to a lifestyle. So I love how you say make healthy choices. And you
Yeah.
don't always have to make the healthy choice every single day. It's funny. My kids have been on a plant-based diet for 3 years. And honestly, I don't even think they know it.
And that part too.
It's that.
No, because they've been raised that way.
They don't know. They don't know that they are eating, mushroom chicken nuggets. They have no, but I think one for me, like I needed to transition to a more plant-based diet, because it helped. And that was actually something that kicked off when I was separated, and was huge for me. And then it
Mhm.
trickled over, to my kids. And one thing that we really love to do together is just juicing. And so
Hmm.
it's a really cool activity, right? To just talk to them about these plants have this sort of effect, right? And then it's just like a fun experiment, because, especially when you think about women, right? The pressure that we put on ourselves and our body, like you really have to get out of this headspace of there's an image that my body needs to look like, and then change it into what are you putting into your body?
Mhm.
And how are you working out your body? And so, I think my son is naturally active. He's a boy. He's one of those kids, when you wake him up, you need to take him outside, almost like a dog. And you had to run the energy. Whereas my daughter, right, she's kind of entering into this age where, she might be I think our daughters are maybe the same age. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
8.
yeah, mine just turned 9 in
Oh
February.
my gosh. I remember the pictures when she was a baby. I know it sounds crazy that I've been stalking you, but it's all in love.
book. You can't stalk an open book. If I put everything out there, it's your right to view it.
It's all in love. I just remember she's a little baby. It's like, yeah, they are the same age. And, so for her, it's more so, right, those healthy choices and how do you want your body to feel? And I think it's just really, cool to see you leading by example. And so, the last question that I have, and it has been a burning question.
Goodness.
The Friday morning breakfast. Let me know thy ways. I'm trying to figure out what time you wake up.
It's really simple. It started because whenever I was little, it was something that my parents did with me. I don't even think it lasted that long. It was probably just during elementary school and maybe the beginning part of middle school until I told my dad that I didn't want him to have lunch with me anymore. That was a whole thing that he reminds me about all the time. I just remember that on Fridays, it was just a special breakfast. So we would go to Burger King or we would go get donuts. It just wasn't the regular breakfast that we were having all the time. And so when I had Tiana and she was able to eat solid food, like this started from jump. When she was able to eat solid food, I was like, this is what our Fridays are going to be. Whether it's a donut shop or us going to a restaurant or something like that, we're going to have donut Fridays on every, tradition or out to eat Fridays on every morning that we can. So we do it. The kids like it for the most part. Every now and then I have to fuss like, it's Restaurant Friday. Let's go. You got to move out the door.
Yeah.
But they're like, yes, it's Friday. What are we doing? Where are we going? The crazy part about where we live is that there's not a whole bunch of breakfast restaurants. So we're pretty much down to 2 local diners, the donut shop, McDonald's, and then I can go on the other side of town that's closer to their school and do IHOP because it's right there.
Yeah.
For the most part, they get up at the same time that they would get up for the bus, and we just leave a little bit earlier. And since we've been frequenting a lot of the same restaurants and stuff for years, they know as soon as we walk in. So like one around the corner, as soon as we walk in on Friday, she's like, okay, 1 chocolate chip pancake to split. You're getting the veggie white omelet, add bacon and a biscuit. And my oldest is a little iffy. So every now and then he's like, I want French toast. I want a blueberry pancake or something like that. But she knows as soon as we walk in the door, here's all their drinks and they get us in and out the door pretty quickly.
Wow, I love that. So that is the trick. You frequent it enough and they know your order to get you in and out. I've always wondered, honestly. I have.
If we like go to IHOP and it's like a new lady, then we're like, okay, come on, let's go, hurry up and eat.
Okay, because honestly, I was like, are you getting up at 5? Are you getting up at 4? Let me know the time. But I love that idea. And it's something, me and my kids haven't gotten to like the sit down restaurant part just because my son, it takes him 30 minutes to get out of bed. I love that idea of just being really intentional about adding a special day, giving everyone that time. And, we do the kind of donut stop and we just, sometimes they can get out the car if we're not too late. And sometimes, we'll just ride and we'll kind of do little conversation topics, but that's always something I've just been really curious about and I've really admired. So yeah, that was all I had. I just really appreciate like you taking the time and the conversation and to bring everything, full circle and giving me the grace, to be me and ask whatever I want. But yeah.
Yay, I appreciate it. And as always, if you have any additional questions, open to
I know, I'm like, should we do this again?
I appreciate you thinking about me and reaching out to me, and it makes me feel good to know that someone can look at my story and something that like hurt me in the beginning, right? So that I was hurt by and other people are able to grow from it or I'm able to grow from it. So I appreciate hearing some of the things that you've been able to use or how you've been able to appreciate my business, what's happening to me.
Yay. No, I really do appreciate it.
'Cause I don't